Today we're going to talk about our reactions to some of the highlights from LVMH Watch Week. Now, starting out of the gate with Zenith. Zenith came out with one major new release, which was the Zenith Chronomaster Original with a full calendar. So it now features the day, the date, the month, and of course the moon phase. Now this pays homage to an original prototype from 1970 in which they used the same complication. However, this prototype was only limited to 25 pieces and never made it to regular production. Now, however, the new version in the Chronomaster original case at 38mm is going to be a regular production model, and of course it's based on the current production El Primero 3600 movement, so it still has that 1/10 of a second hand for the chronograph in addition to the full calendar. Now this isn't the first time that Zenith digs through its historical archives, and it's something they've actually done a really good job at in the past. For example, this poker chip version was actually a reimagining of the Zenith El Primero G383. However, instead of doing it in gold and with a yellow tone dial, they've gone for a much more monochrome look but with shocks of this sort of minty green to give it a bit more of a modern vibe. And that's definitely something that we can see from Zenith in the future as they toe that line between modern and also heritage. Speaking of heritage, we have to talk about Tag Heuer. Tag Heuer had an amazing 2023 with a lot of releases inspired by vintage Heuers, thinking of things like the glass box or the skipper, for example. And this year is no different. They've already come out of the gate with a new heritage-inspired model. In this case, it's the Carrera Dato. Now, this wasn't a one-for-one recreation like, for example, what we saw with that Lemania that we featured a few weeks ago. But what they've done is they've done a few sort of quality of life changes, shall we say. Instead of having the date at 12 o'clock, which means it would have been covered by the chronograph when it's not running, they've moved it to the unconventional position of 9 o'clock. This also means it has a single register layout, so it has a single chronograph counter on the 3 o'clock. So this again is Tag Heuer playing a bit with their heritage, but also putting some improvements that they would have gained in hindsight. Of course, on the inside they have their new TH20 movement. These little changes are things that Tag Heuer is doing a great job at, and again a perfect example of using heritage to inspire modern watches while still making a few improvements. Hublot, of course, had to make a big bang. In this case, they quite literally made a new big bang with a full green sapphire version, but more interesting was their MP10 Tourbillon. The MP line in general is Hublot's way of showing that they are very much capable of making some really interesting movements and putting movement first, design second. In this case, they decided to reinvent the wheel, and instead of a normal rotating oscillating mass, they opted for two vertically oscillating masses. So that means that they go up and down and have shock absorbers to make sure that they can still generate power without causing any damage to the watch as you move your hand. Instead of hands, they have a rotating cylinder at the center where you can read the time vertically from hours to minutes, and then your seconds are at 6 o'clock, even though there aren't actually any hands to indicate 6 o'clock. And of course, that's displayed by a tourbillon with a power reserve gauge in the middle. Now, while none of us will probably ever get a chance to hold or even own this limited edition of 30 pieces costing well over 200,000 euros, Hublot has shown their trickle down of this mentality of putting movement first instead of just the design or just the dial. And we've seen that, for example, in things like the Mecha 10. While not a cheap watch by any standards, this still showcases Hublot's know-how in a way that perhaps something like a Celita-based Classic Fusion or an entry-level Big Bang probably wouldn't. Here we have magic gold, which is a material that they themselves invented to make it more resistant than regular gold. But of course, the highlight is the Mecha 10 movement. The entire watch is based around this movement. And while, yes, it does nothing different other than display seconds and the hours and minutes, it does it in a way where it's just fun. They decided to reinvent the way that they structured a movement, they put it front and center, and gave it a 10-day power reserve just for good measure. Hublot may get a bad reputation sometimes for what they do on their entry-level pieces, but it's undeniable the cool things they can do with some of their higher-end pieces. And then last but not least, we have Bulgari. Now, Bulgari didn't come out of the gate with any crazy new introductions or new models. Instead, they went for a variation. They re-released the Octo Finissimo in yellow gold as well as the Bulgari. Now, the Octo Finissimo itself is already a modern icon from Bulgari and has probably ran out of records for it to break. However, probably are waiting to come out with something really mind-blowing over the course of the year. Either way though, it's still an impressive watch. We tested out the stainless steel one a few months ago, and it's just crazy to wrap your mind around the fact that this watch is so incredibly thin, yet still features 100 meters of water resistance and an automatic movement. So that's just our thoughts on the recent releases from LVMH Watch Week, but we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Which was your favorite release and what do you want to see from LVMH's brands in the future? Of course, if you like this video, make sure you like it and share it. If you want to see more videos about watches, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell as well so you know when the next video comes out. But thanks for joining us and we'll catch you on the next video.